Hey crafty friends, today I want to show you 3 different ways to add texture to a scrapbook page. I think the third way is probably my favorite, so make sure you stick around and don't miss that one. I have some winter photos of my daughter. This is actually from this year, so I'm actually working with more current photos and just her playing in the snow, throwing snow up in the air, having a good time. It's one of those days where it's not freezing cold outside, so you can actually be out and enjoy it, but cold enough that the snow isn't melting. I'm going to bring in a variety of papers today, so I had not even touched the Snow Day paper from Stampin' Up. It has some really cute wintry things, some more Christmassy things, but I'm going to be focusing on the winter patterns of this pack. Here's a look at those back sides. I love this snowflake pattern. You can see it has a lot of like peachy pink color in here. I am not going to be using that. I'm mostly going to focus on the blues and greens. And then I'm also going to bring in a little bit of paper from the Nests of Winter because it has some of that same sort of blue tones in it, and then some wood grain from the Country Woods pack. Now, the very first way that I'm going to bring in texture is actually with my base. So I considered just using white cardstock, and that is often what I will start with, especially if I want to do some layering and things. But I found this in my stash. This is wood textured 12 by 12 specialty paper. And I'm going to hold it up here so hopefully you can see that beautiful texture, and you can feel the texture too. It's not just like a printed texture. It's actually like it's been embossed. Now, if you don't have a paper like this that already has some nice texture on it, you could also use embossing folders to add pieces that have embossed texture on them. Or you could even stamp like some wood grain, and you could add embossing powder to give like a raised design as well. So this is what I'm going to work on top of. And I think I may bring in some ink just to highlight the texture that is there, because when it's white on white, you really don't see it unless you're in person. But as soon as I add ink, it's going to catch on all that beautiful wood grain. Now I've cut down some of my patterns into strips and kind of a big chunk here. So what I'm thinking is I want to add my photos sort of like this because she is facing to the left. And so I'm going to put them on something like that. I'll have to play with the placement and just see how far I want everything to go. I do have a piece of garden green. This is the two-tone cardstock, so you can see we got the 2 shades happening. I'm going to take the lighter side and I'm going to matte this back piece. And I just like the way that that makes it pop. And I'm definitely going to want to matte my photos. So I could just do a white matte since they are on top of pattern papers. But I could also bring in some gray. This is basic gray from Stampin' Up. And this brings out the gray in her pants. So she has like gray and navy and just a little bit of a bright pink there. I'm not going to focus on bringing in the pink. I think this double matte is a great way to go and just make these photos really stand out on the page. So I will go ahead and probably adhere those down because I like how that makes them pop. Now, another way that we can add texture that is super easy, does not take a lot of work, is just to rip our papers. So you want to hold your hand kind of close there so that your ripping doesn't get away from you and it kind of goes crazy all over the place. This is a super easy way to add a little bit of extra texture, make it look a little bit more organic. And you could see already, I like the difference that makes. It's not so like straight and perfect. This one, I'm going to try and rip a little bit less. So I'm going to pinch like right at the edge here, because in the piece that I cut, I did not allow a lot of extra for ripping off. So we'll try this and see if that's going to work or if I've made it too small now. Sometimes you just don't know until you go ahead and give it a try and see what it looks like. I really like having ripped strips kind of like layered on top of each other. Sometimes I'll do that, like instead of doing a border punch or something, I will just rip them, and it adds that little bit of detail, softens kind of the harshness of a solid line. And then I can always tuck this a little bit farther under here. For my title, I know I want to use a stamp. I just recently got this set. It's called Snow Day, and this is in the last chance section, and it is discounted. And I thought I would get it because there's really great options for titles, but also titles that I can use at any time, like Magical Moments, Better Together, What Fun, Unforgettable Memories. Like, it's not just a winter set, which I like because I think I'll get more use out of it. So I think I want to use the Snow Day title. But when you're stamping your title, I don't necessarily like to just cut around my stamped image. So I want to bring in a die cut. I've used this one a couple other times for titles and it works so good. It's meant for Slimline cards. It's from close to my heart, the Slimline shaker window. And I'm using this inside die here. I like the little edge that it has there with the stitching and the little scallop. And I think this would be a great place to have my photos kind of land on here. So I'll just need to kind of determine where I want that to sit. But I'm thinking if I have it coming out the bottom here, that should give me just enough room to stamp my title. Now that I have the basic setup of my layout, I want to go ahead and stick some of my pieces together so that it's easier to move things around. And I think I am going to try inking right on my base page, just so that I can see that texture a little bit more. So I'll stick those together and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I've roughly stuck my pieces together, but this is not adhered to the page, just my individual layered pieces. I stuck these two together so that I have some flexibility to move things around because I'm going to ink on my background and I want to be able to move and slide things. So I have a blending brush and I have two colors of ink. I've pulled Pool Party and Coastal Cabana. Pool Party is in the Snow Day collection and Coastal Cabana is in the Nests of Winter collection, but they are very similar. This is basically a darker shade of this one. They work really nice together. So I thought what I'd do is I will start with the lighter one first, see how I like it, and decide if I want to go darker or if this is enough. Now, it is one of those things where you're not going to see it as good on camera as it is in person. It always looks lighter on camera. So especially at first, it might look like I'm doing absolutely nothing. So let's see here. We're going to put this here. I'm just going to see. Yeah. All right. So I think what I want to do is kind of do this bottom section here and then kind of around this area. Those are going to be two of my points of embellishment, and I think it'll just help to reinforce that. So I'm just going to slide this up. You always want to start your blending brush where it's going to be hidden by your paper, just so you don't end up with like a polka dot where you put your blending brush down. That's also one reason why I like to tap it off onto a scrap piece first. That does help reduce the chance of getting like unblended lines. I hope you guys can see the texture that's coming out as I add ink. This paper is just gorgeous. It's really a shame there's not more than 2 pieces in one of those packs, but I think I probably need to order some more. It's been in my collection since I think I first ordered it back in like May or June or something like that, and kind of forgot about it. And then when I was looking for papers for this layout, I was like, oh, that would just be perfect. So let's bring this back in here. Just see how things are looking. Kind of aiming to have this equal distant from the top and the bottom. I'm liking the lighter tone. I'm just going to keep layering it up a little bit more. I want it a little bit bolder, but I think the darker color, the Coastal Cabana, is going to be too dark. I still want this to be soft and wintry, and I don't want it to get carried away. Yeah, I love that. Okay, now I want to do some over on this corner, and I'm going to try and not go right to the edge, kind of end before the edge. Might be a little bit tricky. I just think this is such a fun way to easily add ink. I do ink blending on my base pages a lot, actually. I kind of go in spurts with it where I'll do it on every page, and then I'll kind of stop for a while, but it's one of those things like adding splatter stamps or ink splattering. just adds a little finishing touch to the background. All right, there we go. I think that's where I'm going to stop. I'm really happy with how that looks and that little bit of extra softness that it brings. I've cut a couple of little banner pieces here and I'm debating putting them up in this corner just to bring a little extra detail up there. Not 100% sold on that's what I want to do, but I am keeping that open as an option. It might even look better bringing it in from the side like this way. So we'll see. That's just going to hang out there for now. Now looking at how I want to embellish this. Like I said, I know I want to stamp on here, so I could probably do that first. And I think I'm just going to go for like the middle at the bottom, and then I should be able to just slide it around and find the right positioning that way. So let's just move that out of the way. Then I'm going to flip my mat over. I'm using my Versamat from Close to My Heart. And it has a spongy backside. Don't mind all the circles on here. It's what happens when you set like warm things, like a warm bowl on top of this mat on the spongy side. These mats are definitely starting to look a little worse for wear, but they still work really well. So I'm going to use Coastal Cabana for this title. So I'm just going to lightly tap that on there. These Stampin' Up! Pads have a foam pad, so you really don't need to or want to push very hard on them. I am just touching it to my stamp, and I'm going to do a test stamp right here. You always want to test out your stamp. I can see I have something on the D right there. So I'm going to grab my little chamois cloth here and just make sure, get whatever fluff and stuff is on there. All right, that turned out pretty good. Had a little unevenness still on my D, but not bad. I'm happy with that. Okay, so this is going to slide under here like that. So now I want to bring in some embellishments. So this is the Snowy Winter set that goes along with the Snow Day collection. And it has stamps and coordinating dies. And the fun thing is that these coordinating dies, they cut out some of the pattern papers. So for the little penguin here, this one cuts out any of the penguins that kind of have their hands out, like this guy and this guy. That die will cut those out. And then there's also a coordinating stamp that the die cuts out as well. And then for the little snowman, these little snowmen here, obviously not the one with the hat or the earmuffs, but the kind of plain looking snowman, him over here that doesn't have anything, and the one that has the scarf you can cut out, as well as some of these dies cut out the trees. So you got this little one here that will cut out that one, and then this big one here cuts out that one. And of course, you can easily hand cut these as well. There's lots of little images in here that you can use to build fun scenes, and they definitely could be Christmas, but they can also just be winter as well. So I've gone ahead and die cut a little snowman. I've also done a little penguin and some of these trees. Put another one up here. I kind of want this scene to kind of go upwards a little bit. And then we'll add some more trees down here somewhere. Okay, and I'm also going to stamp a couple of the images from this set. So I have the little house, and I'm going to use gray granite. This is kind of a brownish gray. Will match this wood grain really well. And then I also want to do a little mountain here to go behind here and make that little scene taller. I'm going to switch out my gray, and I'm going to reach for basic gray, which is more of a cool tone. That's what my photo mats are. And I'm not sure if I want first generation or second generation for my mountain, so I'm going to do both. And then once I die cut them, I can figure out which is best. And now I'm just going to bring in these little images here to complete my little scenes. I'm not sure if I want the big tree on the outside or the inside. Maybe layer a tree in front of the cabin, something like that. I think I might bring this one farther down too. I'm going to bring in this little spot here for some journaling. I don't have a lot to say, but I still want a little spot. This is a Close to My Heart die. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but I will write that down in the description box for you. Now I am liking how this is looking, but the one thing that I feel like I want to add still is bring in some of this darker blue. Everything is a little bit monochromatic. I definitely need to add something to this area to add some more weight there. So I cut some snowflakes from one of my Close to My Heart set. This is just called Snowflakes. And this is out of Sapphire cardstock. I used the light side of Sapphire. And I think I want to just slip this right under here. Kind of unify all those little pieces. I also have some itty bitty snowflakes. This one is from the Snowy Wonder set. And then I think if we go across and just kind of bulk up this area here, make that little penguin more of like a feature. And then maybe add a couple over here. I'm not exactly sure where I want to put that. If I want to have 3 or if 2 is good enough, we shall see. Okay, I love how this is coming together. I'm going to quickly stick this down off camera, and then it's time for our third way to add texture to this layout. I have most things stuck into place. I haven't put these banners on yet because I'm not 100% sold that I want them up there. Still have to decide what I want to do with that, and I haven't put these down or a few of these images until I have my photos set into place. Now for the third way, I'm going to add texture to this layout. I've been watching a really fun class on Skillshare about embroidering on photos. This video is sponsored by Skillshare, so I thought it would be fun to incorporate this technique into my layout. If you're not familiar with Skillshare, it's the largest online learning platform perfect for creative people. They have a huge selection of classes on all kinds of topics like photography, painting, jewelry making, cooking, art journaling, and more. You can even take classes all about video production, marketing, and productivity. They encourage a learn by doing approach with the ability to submit a project at the end of the class and receive feedback from the community. I enjoyed the last class that I took by Peggy Dean so much that I decided to take another one. The inspiration for my layout today came from her class called Embroidery on Photographs with 10 Simple Stitches. In the last couple of years, I've enjoyed dabbling with embroidery on my projects, and her class is such an interesting idea for embellishing your photos by stitching on them. Her examples are a little bit more in depth than I'm going to do today, but I was so inspired by all her amazing examples. If you want to expand your creative practice and try something new, the first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive 1 month free trial of Skillshare. I hope you check it out. So I know I want to keep this fairly simple, but I love the idea of adding some details, especially this photo I think is perfect because I have so much sky in here. I have room actually all the way around Isabella to add some embellishing. This one's a little bit tighter, so I'm not sure if I will add any on this photo or maybe just a few little small ones, but I think I'm going to create some snowflakes. So I did like a little test here to see how this would look, how I want to pierce my holes. And I tried to make like a smaller one with the silver thread, and I think it ends up looking too much like a flower. Whereas this one, I think with the 4 and then 2 longer ones, I think it definitely looks more like a snowflake. I would definitely recommend practicing first, especially if you don't do a lot of embroidering things. Kind of figure out what you want to do. You could even make like a little template so that all of your holes will be equally spaced. You could use a ruler. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go a little bit more whimsical and just go for it. So I think I want to add some on my photograph and maybe even bring it up onto my pattern paper to like tie it into the whole layout. You're going to want some sort of like thick foam mat. This is a nice like thick one. I know Stampin' Up has a mat as well. This one I've had in my stash for a very long time. I have pulled in this 3813 DMC thread. It's pretty good match to the colors that I'm working with. I also pulled in some of this. This is the DMC kind of like metallic thread. This is D168. It's a silver color. I could also bring in some of the darker blue if I want to, but I'm going to start with these lighter colors first and just see how that's looking. Now it's going to be a little bit of a deep hole to punch to get through these 3 layers, but I didn't want to have the bulk of the thread on just the photo. I wanted to have my matting all stuck together so that if I need to like pop up my mat to make room for the thread on the backside, I can do that. I'm using my Take a Pick tool, and I put in the end that has the piercing tool on it. That tool does have like interchangeable ends that do all kinds of cool things. I'm also going to bring in just some regular Scotch tape. And then for my needles, I have Tapestry needles. So I'm excited for this. I like the Tapestry needles because they are blunt on the one end, so you don't have to worry about jabbing yourself. And now I need to decide where I'm going to start this. I think if I stagger them, so like have one right here, maybe a smaller one over there, and another one here, just kind of offset them in a bit of a triangle. I think that should work really good. Okay, we're just gonna go for it. So I'm trying to put these 4 holes kind of equal distance. And then I'm gonna make a longer one, top and bottom. So now I could go just straight and have it kind of bulkier in the middle, or I can poke a hole in the middle and have my threads go through. That's what I did here, where my thread just kind of went through. So let's go ahead and just copy that. I'm going to go ahead and show you kind of the whole process of one of these, but I'm not going to make you watch me do all of the stitching. So I just cut a length off. I am leaving all 6 strands together. These have like 6 little strands that make up the big one. And I am just going to leave them all together, which makes it a little bit thicker. If you wanted finer lines, more of a fine detail, then you'd want to pull them apart and use less of the threads. So I'm going to go through that middle hole. And then I don't think it really matters what order we go in, but I put up through the middle, down through one of the holes, and then I'm just going to pull this over and tape that down. I prefer to tape my ends. I find I get a little bit flatter than trying to make knots. And then I'm going to go up through that top hole. And I want to pull this tight. And then I'm going to go down through the middle. Then up through the next hole. And down through the middle. You can really play with kind of different stitches in that class. She had a bunch of different stitches and French knots and all kinds of fun things that you could do. But I'm just going to do a really simple stitch and just keep going up from the bottom down through that middle hole. It's getting a little tight through that middle hole. Now I'm going to cut off the ends. You could keep going to different ones and not cut your thread in between. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to put the next one that is that color, so I just decided to cut it. There you go. You can see my first little snowflake. If you're just starting out, the DMC floss is easier to work with than this thread. This is like a metallic thread, and you just have to work with it a little bit more. It tends to snag a little bit easier. Now for this one, it's a lot thinner. So I'm going to double it up. And you could go even more than that. You could do 4 strands thickness to give it a little bit more bulk, just like this regular thread. So I've folded it in half. I'm taking the rounded loop and I'm going to push it through the eye of my needle. And I'm going to pull it until I just have a little bit of tail left. And this is one way you can do it if you don't want to use tape or you don't want to tie a knot. I'm going to go in from the backside. I'm going to go to the hole that's across from it. Remember, I didn't poke a hole in the center of this one because I felt like it ended up looking too much like a flower on my little test that I did. Okay. when you have that loop, you can actually just run your needle through that loop, and when you pull it, it locks it into place. But if you do this, you need to make sure that your finger holds that. I'm just going to hold it with my nail, and then when I go around to the next one, that will help lock it into place. But if you don't do that, sometimes that little knot will come around to the front of your piece. So I'm going to do my best to keep this smooth. A lot of times with this one, it likes to kind of get tangled up and not lay as perfectly smooth. So now I'm going to go up through a hole, down through a hole, and you could see these are all just overlapping here in the middle. So that's what I have so far. And then I want to keep that tight as I go around to the back and then use a piece of tape to stick that down. All right, here is how it is looking. That's looking great so far. Okay, I'm going to go ahead off camera and add some more snowflakes, and then I'll be right back. All right, I have done my stitching. And I'll hold it up close here so you can see what that looks like. I used a combination of the two different colors of thread that I showed you. So I did decide to add some on the smaller one as well. Put 5 all together. It was kind of tricky to decide. I kind of went one at a time, trying to decide how many I wanted to put. And then I did add a couple coming over into my clusters here. So I got 2 more down there, and then I have another one down there. But I really love how they turned out. It's something just a little bit different. I think they'd make really nice like stars in a night sky if you wanted to do something like that. I do feel like I want to add one more finishing touch. And I was thinking maybe rhinestones or something, but I decided to go ahead with the Pearlized Enamel Effects. And this is in the pearl color. I squirted some out onto a block here and just mixed it down with some water to make it a little bit more runny. And then I'm going to splatter it. So this can be a little bit tricky. I want to make sure I don't get any on my photos. And I don't really want any on my title either. So I'm going to go ahead and just add some splatter around this part here, kind of everywhere that I inked. And I'm just tapping my brush, and I will go around and clean up whatever is kind of left over there. Add some splatter over here. The more you put on the brush, the bigger splatters you can get. You can also vary the size by how like watery it is. Now you do want to make sure you wash out your brush right away and wipe up anything that got places you don't want it to be before it dries. Now you can also just put your page into like a splatter box, and that will help contain any mess. Now this isn't quite dry yet, but you can kind of get the idea. I'm going to have some dimensional drops, and they're going to have a nice little like pearlized sheen to them. So just a subtle detail that adds to that feeling of snowflakes. And I think it just adds a finishing touch onto those inked areas. Now over here for my banners, I did decide to put them on, and then I went ahead and put like a running stitch, 2 lines of running stitch down here with a dark blue thread. And I really love how that turned out. Very much goes along with the rest of the feel of the layout. I hope you enjoyed watching this process and it gave you some ideas for your own projects. If you'd like to continue watching more of my videos, check out this playlist here. And I will see you again soon with another video.